up, everybody? Welcome to week 11 of the fantasy football season. I am Nate Polvogt. I am here with my co-host, the one and only Mr. Mike Reedy, the author of Heartbreakers and Moneymakers. Make sure you are checking out that article every single week for your DFS needs. But for today, we are here to help you set those waiver wire claims for week 11. Mike, we're pushing towards the playoffs, man. We've got a couple of weeks until the playoffs start. This is a big week, and there are some players out there that probably need to be rostered for playoff pushes, especially if you have the bench room. How are you feeling about the waiver wire this week?
Oh, now you muted me again.
Yeah, here we go. All right, we are here. We are here.
If I have a desperate need, I'll fill it, right? So, there's a few guys out there at, say, wide receiver and or quarterback, I think you might want to make a move on. This is one of the weeks where I'll openly tell you I have leagues where I don't really have a desperate need anywhere, and I'm looking to climb waiver priority, even if it's 2 spots or 3 spots in my league where that's how it's done. I'm not throwing. I don't know if there's anybody super valuable enough to force me to make a waiver move this week.
Sure. I mean, if you're someone with a deep need at a position, or you've got an open bench slot, and maybe you want to take a chance on a guy who might develop over the next couple of weeks, more of like a speculative ad. There are some of those guys out there.
Or you're playing keep away. I'll admit.
Yeah, that too.
There's teams I will openly, especially if they're good and they're a contender, and all of a sudden they have a need, like a bye week need or something like that. That's why you need to know what's going on with the other teams in your league. I'll just try to suck up that need so they can't have that player.
Yep. I mean, that's a perfectly fine strategy. I do it all the time in my home league. Not so much anymore because we invited a bunch of sharks in. It is what it is. We never win, though. It's always the friends and the family that end up taking that league. I've got a question here before we get onto our waiver wire quarterbacks, Mike. It is Jeff Rogers over there in the chat on YouTube. Rest of season, who are you riding with at wide receiver? Brian Thomas Jr. or Calvin Ridley? And then Cade Otton or TJ Hawkinson at tight end, Mike?
Oh, so I find it hard to trust Ridley right now. Even with the game he just had this week, I don't know. I'm not trusting him. BTJ is hard to trust though too. Geez, right now with Mac Jones at quarterback, so this is pretty tough. Maybe I'll lean Ridley here because of what he just did this past week. Maybe Will Levis is gonna throw him the ball like he should be more often. It could be a trend. If Lawrence was playing at quarterback, I would say BTJ. And
Sure.
I'm going Otton over Hawkinson. The volume's just too high for me to pass on Otton right now.
Yeah, I'm with you. With Trevor Lawrence out, it's hard to trust Brian Thomas Jr. I'm going to go Calvin Ridley. I think Levis is going to start targeting him a little bit more. And I'm with you on Cade Otton. I love TJ Hawkinson, but Josh Oliver's carved out a role for himself in that offense, and that does affect what Hawkinson's going to see. Versus Otton, no Chris Godwin. We're hoping Mike Evans comes back this week or next. Cade Otton would be the pick for me as well. I think. Who would have thought? Yeah. It's volume-based, but Otton's going to see that volume. He's going to see 10 to 12 targets a game for now. So with that, Mike, let's move on to some of these waiver wire quarterbacks here for week 11. I'm going to roll through the list of guys who are available and worth even looking at right now. Right now, we have got Bo Nix is roughly around 48% rostered across all platforms. We've got Russell Wilson in Pittsburgh, 40% on ESPN, 22% on Yahoo. Justin Herbert, 55 on Yahoo, 47% on ESPN. Derek Carr working his way back into the conversation here, coming back from injury, 12% on Yahoo and ESPN. Drake May, 13% on Yahoo, 11% on ESPN, and then Danny Dimes. This is the weirdest disparity here, Mike. 20% owned on Yahoo, only 1% rostered on ESPN for Dimes. I want to start with Danny Dimes, actually, here. This is an interesting one to pull up. We've really been crapping on him a lot, but the last 2 weeks, he has shown the rushing acumen, 2 rushing touchdowns. He had 2 passing touchdowns against Washington, week 9. he's been mildly efficient in the passing game these last couple of weeks. He's going to probably be the cheapest ad out of these guys this week, I would assume.
You can probably pick him up tomorrow after waivers process. His schedule's really, really easy the rest of the way, right? That's the thing. He's going to bye week 11, so I doubt anybody's going to add him. You can probably get him after waivers process. The schedule's very, very easy, and that's why I started talking about him last week. And I've had him in my stash articles on Saturday. I know people aren't adding him. I know people keep feeling like he's going to get benched. I have to tell you, he's not getting benched. I do not see that happening. I know people keep talking about it. It's not going to happen. What they have behind him isn't any better.
You don't want Drew Lock? I mean, come on, man.
No. And he can keep getting you fantasy production, right? Like,
well, if he's going to do it on the ground, if you're getting a rushing touchdown a game out of him and you're getting 40 to 70 yards on the ground, that makes up for everything he doesn't do in the passing game, in my opinion. And like you said, schedule the rest of the way. You get past the bye, Tampa Bay, Dallas, New Orleans, Baltimore, Atlanta, and then week 17, if you make the fantasy championships, they've got Indianapolis at home, and that defense in Indianapolis is not good. That could be in 2 QB leagues. If you stash him now, he's a guy that could help you win a fantasy championship in week 17. Now, speaking of guys who their rushing ability is really what's kind of carrying them right now, Bo Nix in Denver. I'm surprised at how well he's played. He's right about 50% rostered. The reason I like him, Mike, is because same thing. Schedule the rest of the way is pretty easy for Nix outside of week 11 against Atlanta and then week 13 against Cleveland. This is a pretty cake schedule for Nix where I think he can run the ball and be fantasy relevant, maybe even in 1 QB leagues.
Maybe, right? So like he's not getting low teens. His floor seems fairly high compared to some other people. I mean, let's face it, like even Stafford, Goff, and Baker Mayfield were all like 10, 11 points recently games. So it appears Nix's floor is higher than that. I'm not sure his ceiling's all that high. He's producing right now, as you said earlier. It's kind of ugly. We don't really know how he's doing it, but he's been what, top 12, right?
Right now he's QB9 on the season. He was QB12 last week against Kansas City. He's been QB6 the last 5 weeks. And like you said, it's not pretty, but it seems like he's getting it done. And he 16 fantasy points against a pretty damn good Kansas City defense, almost wins that game. Well, I think we know.
Watchdog.
Yeah, Watchdog does not like Bo Nix. I don't. This is one of those ads where there are guys who performed much worse. Joe Flacco, Jared Goff. If you've got Bryce Young, C.J. Stroud, Kirk Cousins, Matthew Stafford, these are all guys who he is outperforming right now in fantasy. Guys that you're starting in 1 QB leagues. So I know I sound like a Denver homer, and maybe I am just a little bit because it's kind of nice to see us winning. But
I'm laughing at the dog barking. I went on mute, but yeah, you are a Denver homer.
I am a Denver homer. Now, Derek Carr.
High-end QB2.
High-end QB2.
If you have a really good team and you're playing in like a 10 or 12 team fantasy league everywhere else, he's a guy you can plug in and ride on these weeks where the matchup's right, and he'll produce. I do know from experience myself that if you want to trust him week in and week out, he's going to let you down eventually as well. And you're probably never going to see top 5 numbers from him. But
no,
he surprisingly is somewhat efficient, and for the most part, I would say that average like weekly deal. I've won leagues before with this guy as my quarterback and had people say, how is that possible? Dude, because he's just getting me like 17, 18 points a week, and that's all I need from that slot.
Yep. He's consistent.
Yeah.
Well, and Dennis Allen being gone gives me a little bit more hope for Carr and for this offense. Hearing the whole BS with what he did with Kendre Miller, sending him to IR, like that locker room had to have been toxic as hell with Dennis Allen. So
wide receiver injuries make it bad, though. That's
they do
there.
They do, but he's got to throw it to somebody, and he's got Alvin Kamara. Yeah, we will. Now, I want to touch on the last couple here. Drake May is the first one I want to touch on. Not really a one QB league ad, but I think down the road, he could provide some value in 2 QB leagues. He's going to be cheap too right now.
He's really cheap right now. He was just, okay this past week, but he's also somebody who takes off and runs. I think he's probably another high-end QB2 the rest of the way. His numbers don't always look great, but he seems to get 2 touchdowns in there quite often. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, he had the 2 passing last week, then he had a passing and a rushing this week. So yeah, if he's going to give you 2 touchdowns a week in 2 QB leagues, I'll take it.
Yeah,
and take it all day.
It's real life quarterback being a Patriots homer. He looks great on the field and as a leader. So the fantasy numbers will come. The team, let's face it, the team's not great right now, right?
Well, and that was part of my write-up on him in my waiver wire article was just that. Like, I'm impressed with what he's doing with really no weapons around him outside of Ramondre Stevenson and Hunter Henry and a terrible offensive line. So thank God the kid can run, because if he couldn't, we would be talking about Drake May this week. Now, Russell Wilson can't run, but he's getting it done somehow in Pittsburgh. I think he probably would be my priority on the waiver wire this week if you're looking for a quarterback. He's got weapons. He's got a good offense. The line's starting to protect him. He's showing that he's a veteran. He has this Pittsburgh team winning.
He looks really good, right, in real football, and he's producing. I think we mentioned it when the Mike Williams trade happened as well. That's going to help Russ more than Williams in it, like it did this week, right? I like Russ as an ad. It's either him or Justin Herbert probably is the top ad at quarterback. Both of those
Justin Herbert's another one. I mean, and you really do love to see this Chargers offense. Eventually I'll stop saying San Diego. But you love to see this Chargers offense actually throwing the ball. And Herbert's finally fantasy viable. And again, we've talked about this 1,000 times. We'd written him off before the season, but he's a guy you should be looking to add now. He's got value the rest of the way.
Those would be my top 2 ads at quarterback, though. I would want to grab one of those guys if I needed a quarterback for a bye week or because I need one because I'm not trusting the guys I have.
Yeah, exactly. I've got a couple of comments in the chat here I want to get to. Brad McCoy 24. He has Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jalen Waddle, DJ Moore, Chris Olave, and Brian Thomas Jr. at wide receiver. But he's got Saquon, Jonathan Taylor, Tyrone Tracy, Kareem Hunt, and Nick Chubb at running back. Do I try to trade JT for Tyreek straight up?
I don't want Tyreek right now, so no.
I don't either. No.
Find someone else to target that can give you production.
Malik Neighbors, even Wan'Dale Robinson, just on volume. You could give up less than JT for that. Guys like that. Yeah, I went straight Giants, but
yeah, but if you're gonna give up somebody really good, you want big production coming back. And
exactly.
You're not getting that from Tyreek Hill right now. I saw Dave Kluge put out something around it, and Tyreek's been like wide receiver 51, wide receiver 57, wide receiver 40. Like, don't trade for that. Don't trade for that. Don't do it. It's
not pretty. We've got Robert Mitchell in the chat saying hello and good afternoon, guys. Robert, good afternoon. Thanks for tuning in. He would like to know our thoughts on Audric Estime. But before we get to that, we're getting into our running back segment here. Brad wants to know maybe JT and Waddle for AJ Brown. If you can get that deal done, do it. 100% do it.
That's a good one.
Do it. That's a really good one. Now, Robert, we're going to get into our waiver wire running backs here, and we'll start, since you asked, with Audric Estime over in Denver. This backfield's ugly. Javonte Williams isn't quite what we thought he was going to be, to the point he got 2 carries last week. Jaleel McLaughlin got 1 against Kansas City. Audric Estime, 14 carries.
So if you need a running back, or if you just want to add a running back on your bench that even if you might never play him, because I'm not against that either right now, right? Running backs are super valuable. Add him. This reeks of potential 3-headed running back by committee, and that's my thoughts on it.
Yes. Here's what I would do with Audric Estime. If you've got the bench spot, add him. I think there's a chance that what we saw against Kansas City is going to become the norm in this offense because Javonte Williams just has not been efficient. Jaleel McLaughlin's too small to be continually efficient. Audric Estime, he does what they need him to do, which is pound the rock in short yardage situations. He can get 4 or 5 yards. That's what he was doing effectively on Sunday. But also, if it doesn't pan out, because like you said, this could end up being just a flat out 3-headed monster, you can drop him in 2 weeks. If you don't have the bench space, you can't hold him for a couple weeks, don't bother. Yeah. It's not worth it.
It is kind of like he's free, right? I wouldn't go blow the fab on
no
anything like that.
No. And the way I look at it is he's like you said, he's going to be free this week. If something happens over the next 2 weeks and he starts to get the lion's share of the carries and he becomes productive, you got him for free. He's not going to be cheap in 2 weeks. But that's a real speculative look at it, right?
Like, I think people are going to go crazy for him this week. He's the guy everybody's writing up as like the top running back to add. I wouldn't feel bad if I missed out on it as well as where I'm going with that. If you miss out and somebody else gets him, don't cry about it.
Yeah.
And if he hits, it's a lottery ticket, and
he's not my top ad this week. He's very much a speculative.
The production isn't going to be great because it hasn't been from a running back on that team, and they don't need it to be because they're doing just fine as far as record goes with what they're doing.
Yeah, 5-5 is better than I think anyone would have hoped this team to be, quite honestly. Now, Tyler Algier, Khalil Herbert, Gus Edwards, and Ray Davis kind of round out the running backs we want to talk about here. Mike, my favorite one's Ray Davis. Everyone else feels like a handcuff. And as much as Ray Davis feels like a handcuff too, he's a handcuff that has some independent value.
He does have independent value. He's my favorite too. But if I wasn't going with him after him, I would probably say Gus Edwards.
Sure.
I know Gus had only like 25% of the snaps, I think, this past week, but he had production on his volume. Like, he actually produced fairly well. And
5.5 yards per carry.
Yeah, J.K. Dobbins didn't. So, there's potential there, but unless you're brand new to fantasy, you should know Gus's potential, right? Like, it's not Jonathan Taylor, it's not Saquon Barkley potential. He's good. Maybe low-end running back 2-ish good. He's not off the charts amazing good.
No. What about Khalil Herbert? How are you feeling about him?
So I added him on a couple of teams. I'm still holding because, Chase Brown looked great, right? So
yeah.
But they're going to eventually work Herbert in some, I think. But, we'll see. I don't know. Just what we were saying about him last week. Remember, he's free. If you have the bench spot,
exactly.
Not whatever. Don't feel bad if you don't get him. Don't feel bad if you drop him in 2 weeks. Don't worry about that stuff.
Yeah, and then the last guy on this list here, Tyler Algier. To me, he feels like if you're a Bijan manager and you want to shore up your roster for the playoffs, make sure you don't get screwed. Go get Tyler Algier. Otherwise, 11 carries for 53 yards last week. Almost no fantasy points. It just. Unless he scores a touchdown, he's not fantasy viable.
No, he's like fuzzy handcuffs,
Yeah. Oh, man. We've got a couple of questions here before we move on to the wide receiver group. Jeff Rogers, he's got Josh Allen by week 12. Stafford or Herbert to fill in? Who are you picking up? I'm going to go Herbert.
So if you asked me 2 weeks ago, I would have said Stafford, but I'm going Herbert as well. That's where I would go with this. I actually have this in a league where I'm in first place as my dilemma, and I am adding Herbert.
Yeah, I would go the same route. Aaron Hudson, Mike, wants to know his current wide receivers are Cooper Kupp, Malik Neighbors, Tyreek Hill, DK Metcalf, Mike Evans, DeAndre Hopkins, Jackson Smith and Jigba, and Jamison Williams. His running backs are Derrick Henry, Christian McCaffrey, and Najee Harris. Would you trade Hopkins for Tony Pollard?
You get that depth piece there, and Pollard. You don't really need Hopkins. Yeah, I would. I don't think Hopkins is going to produce great numbers week in and week out like a lot of other people will expect. I just don't. I don't see it.
Right.
And people are forgetting, People that think just because he's playing with Mahomes makes him excellent, it could. I mean, Juju Smith-Schuster clearly is better playing with Mahomes than not with
Right.
Mahomes. But I don't see the same thing with Hopkins there, right? Like he was one of the best wide receivers in football. I'll stress the words what
Was.
right? And Pollard has the lion's share of the touches, at least right now, for the Titans and for the season.
Well,
It's a nice depth
yeah.
piece there in case something happens to one of your starters, right? Like
Well, and
that.
Tajay Spears is dinged up, so Pollard's going to continue to see that volume rest of the season. So yeah, I would make this deal too, for all the reasons that you said. Aaron also is trying to shape his team for a playoff run. His quarterbacks currently are Russell Wilson and Baker Mayfield. Would you try and trade Jackson Smith and Jigba and Russell Wilson for Joe Burrow? Second biggest threat in the league has Chase right now. I don't think I would. I mean, Burrow's been good, but he's also been streaky. And I worry that
I probably like Baker the best out of all three quarterbacks for consistency. I know Burrow's had some really big games, right? This past week was one of them, but I don't know if you want to make that trade. If they're going to accept JSN and Wilson though for him, that's not a bad deal to get Burrow. But yeah, I mean, I would do it, especially if you don't need JSN. I don't think the world of JSN like other people do. He's probably your fourth receiver, right? So like, why not?
sure.
It's
So
not
here's
great, but I don't know.
here's my only concern with Burrow. If you look at the fantasy, well, look at their schedule the rest of the way. They got the Chargers at a bye week 12, Pittsburgh, Dallas, and Tennessee 14 and 15. Those are manageable. But then week 16 and week 17, Cleveland and Denver. And if you're in a league that runs all the way to week 18, they have got Pittsburgh week 18. Those are three rough matchups right in the thick of the fantasy playoffs. So that's the only thing that would give me pause here. That concerns me. He's not been great in some of those tougher matchups. So, but I mean,
Yeah,
sure. Yeah.
he also hasn't had everybody healthy either, and that's a concern I'd have with him.
Yeah, and Aaron makes a good point here. His worry is that Wilson has a decently tough playoff schedule, and Baker doesn't have all of his weapons. Which I mean,
And
yeah, those are
I
fair
don't think you're
concerns.
giving up all that much to get him myself. So
You're not.
Yeah,
You're not. Let's move over to wide receivers here, Mike. This is a interesting group. We've only got 5 of them here, and I threw in Mike Williams. I don't think you wanted to talk about him. A lot of people are saying he is a wasted ad, and I do tend to agree. 1 target. Now, it was a touchdown, so that was great. I don't know that I necessarily see a massive path to him getting a ton of volume, but if he's going to get those high value targets and he's going to have an opportunity for a touchdown every week, I feel like right now he's worth an ad. If you have that bench spot where you can sit someone, maybe you've got a player who just went on to IR, Dak Prescott, now you're scrambling for a quarterback and you've got another roster spot open, grab Mike Williams and see what happens next couple of weeks. Another speculative ad, but I think it's worth it because what his potential is in this offense. He could be a league-winning type of addition for the fantasy playoffs if he gets rolling in this offense.
He's probably touchdown dependent right now, but when the deal went down, one of the things that a lot of other people were saying about him in real football, not fantasy football, is he's that kind of big wide receiver that will go up and get it that Russell Wilson likes in the red zone. And I mean, every quarterback probably likes that in the red zone, but Wilson will throw him the ball for sure inside the 10, inside the 20. No doubt.
Yep. Again, he's not a guy you're going to start as your wide receiver 1 or wide receiver 2. But if he kind of heats up, he might be worth a flex for some of those boom points. I feel the same way about Marquez Valdes-Scantling. I can't believe we're talking about him, but he's that deep threat.
So he's also available literally everywhere.
Everywhere.
Nobody, that fantasy production helped no one this week. No one was playing him.
Nobody.
I don't think anybody even expected him to be the guy for New Orleans, right? It was Tipton that we were all leaning towards. But it looks like he's got the deep threat role, and we've seen him produce in fantasy before. I'm not saying run out and add him either, right? But we can't ignore the efficiency was awesome too, but we can't ignore the production this week. That's all. I'll probably watch him. More than likely, if he's going to start producing, by the way, somebody adds him next week. He doesn't produce, but he sees 7 targets and they drop him. And then, 7 targets become the norm. And all of a sudden he's worth owning, right? Like it's just how things happen like this. Or he sees 3 targets and does nothing, right? Like,
I mean, those are both probably equally. Yeah, they could both happen. Real quick here, Jeff Rogers in the chat wants to know Chiefs D or Steelers D this week. Both bad matchups. I'm going to take Steelers defense.
I'm going to take Steelers, and I'm not going to worry about the matchups probably the rest of the way because they're such a defense. I just leave them in there and forget about it. Set it, forget it.
I've got my Thursday co-host, Casey Kasem. What is up, Casey? Thanks for dropping in. It is great to see you. You guys will be seeing us soon here Thursday, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's 4 p.m. Central, 3 p.m. Mountain Standard Time for all you people everywhere else. Yes, and like she says, make sure you like this video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our show on Thursday or any of our waiver wire shows every single week, all the way through. We're even going to do week 18 because there are some degenerates out there that like to really hurt themselves, and they're going to have to stream their whole team for a week 18 fantasy championship. Hopefully it's a stacked 2-week championship if your manager is mean enough to do that to you. Now, Xavier Legette, I like him.
Solid ad, not super exciting. He's a flex play. I've actually been forced to play him the past couple of weeks, and he's helped my teams where I needed a wide receiver in some deeper leagues. I don't expect him to explode, but I think if you wanted a Panthers wide receiver, I'd rather have him than Coker. Coker saw a bunch of targets this week and didn't do much with them, where Legette's more likely to get a touchdown. So that's,
touchdown dependence. Ricky Pearsall, do you feel the same way about him? Is he touchdown dependent, Mike?
No, I think he has the Ayuk role in place. I know a lot of people talking more about Juwan Jennings because he had another high volume game, but 2 high volume games does not make a season or somebody I necessarily want to go cuckoo for. Right. Pearsall's the guy I would want out of this whole list of wide receivers, right? Like he's the guy the most. And he had a very solid game. And I mean, what was it, 15 fantasy points? I'll take that every single week, man. Every week. Give me that every week. I'll be super happy.
Well, I mean, we're through 3 games of his professional career. Dude's got 15 targets in his first 3 games. He's got that touchdown last week. Pearsall feels like he's just going to fit into this offense nicely rest of season. If this team has any hopes of doing anything in the playoffs, Pearsall will be involved. He would be my priority wide receiver as well. Right behind him, though, Quentin Johnston. I think there's something there, and I'm not going to piss. I'm not going to piss Herms off and say that he's figured it out this week because I don't think he has. But from a volume standpoint, he's a big part of this offense now.
Well, he came back from that injury, and we're seeing production, right? And I know what he have a touchdown save him this week, right?
Yeah, he only had 2 targets,
but he also had a tougher matchup, right? So if Herbert's going to sling it a little, and he's going to trust Quentin Johnson to actually catch it now, he's a nice ad too, right? Like, I have a couple of leagues where people dropped him because they didn't like the volume this week in the tough matchup. There's easy matchups coming. I'll add him and see what happens myself. There.
Same. Options are so sparse. Like if you can't get Ricky Pearsall, Quentin Johnston's the guy to get. If you can't get Quentin Johnston, I mean, you're looking at Xavier Legette probably. That's the way it goes. Now, I think we're going to move on from wide receivers to tight ends. Oh, man, tight ends. Not a whole lot to talk about here this week. Hunter Henry, we're just going to pound the table, guys.
Chill out there in a lot of
If you want to know why we're saying to add Hunter Henry, go back and watch the last 4 shows. We've got plenty about it.
Andrew Cooper tweeted out he played something like 89% of the offensive snaps and ran 90% of the routes or something crazy like that while he was on the field.
Yep. So Chicago's defense is just good.
Yeah.
They cover tight ends well.
it was a down game because of that. It's not something to panic about. If you're tight end needy, I think he's a solid ad. Again, he's probably not
Yes.
going to pass George Kittle and be the TE1, right? But solid ad.
No, he's a very solid ad. He's better than anybody else who's really available right now. I mean, we're looking at Jatavian Sanders, Carolina, only 2 targets last week, saw 5 the week before. He's been really up and down with the volume. It's hard to trust, really. He's a guy that you're going to stream on a matchup at this point.
Well, and then the other guy I threw in there was Josh Oliver. I know Hawkinson's back, but this guy, since Hawkinson's been back, has seen 13 targets in 2 weeks, right?
Yep.
So I watch what's going on there because I don't know why all of a sudden they're throwing the ball at him, but they are, right? So if that continues, it's could turn into someone you may want to play.
He's got 2 touchdowns the last 3 weeks, 3 touchdowns on the season. It's not a horrible ad.
Not ideal, but yeah, that's it. That's all we have to really talk about.
That's it. So we're going to get into the chat here. The Smitty over there on YouTube, Stafford or May rest a season?
Ooh. I think Stafford may have bigger games than May here and there. I don't know which ones those will be.
Nobody does.
I don't love either if that's who you need to be your starter the rest of the way, but I don't know.
I'm going to go Stafford. I'm going to go with the
probably
veteran.
Stafford because of that, but yeah, that's ugly, man, if you need one of those 2 guys.
Yep. Breezy Fantasy over on YouTube there wants to know 10-man PPR. Should he trade Derrick Henry for CMC and Chuba Hubbard?
Oh, yeah.
Definitely. It's 2 for 1. Take that.
I would have already smashed accept if somebody offered that to me.
Yep.
I wouldn't talk about it either. I would just take it and
just
win.
do it. Yep. Brad McCoy, thoughts on Cedric Tillman in the flex rest of season? Yes, please.
I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
He's seeing it. He's just seeing a ton of volume. It doesn't mean that Cleveland has to be good or that Jameis Winston has to be good. What it means is that he's going to get looked at 15 times a game.
And in the red zone, again, another guy that Winston's just looking for him to throw the ball to him for a touchdown, right? So, yeah. Yes, please. Yeah, I'm all in on Tillman.
Yeah, no, I'm taking that all day. Jeff Rogers wants to know what to do with Jordan Mason. I think that's a good transition to our next segment. Waiver wire drops for the week. Yeah, Jordan Mason has no value now. CMC is back. He's fully integrated into the offense. He balled out last week. Conversely, Jordan Mason had 1 carry for 5 yards, and he saw a 5% snap share. That will be the climate going forward. This is a team that has to win out, so they can't afford to mess around with Mason at this point.
Nope.
Yeah, plain and simple.
Too good. He's just too good.
Yep. And then we're going to go through the rest of these real quick here. No surprise, Aaron Rodgers back to droppable, but he didn't make excuses on Pat McAfee this morning. He kind of owned it a little, I guess. Xavier Worthy over in Kansas City. Maybe someday he'll be fantasy viable, but right now the volume's it's not there.
The rostership for him is high, by the way, too. I can't believe people are holding on. He's holding that bench slot hostage. Let him go and use it for somebody that may at least have the potential to get you production. He's not.
Yeah. The last 2 weeks, 6 targets, 1 catch for 11 yards, and a net of 1.1 fantasy points over the last 2 weeks. So, yeah. Get rid of Xavier Worthy. Deontay Johnson, he's absolutely droppable. He's not really going to be viable in Baltimore. It's appearing he was a depth ad for that offense, which, I mean, they paid almost nothing for him. In Chicago, I think Rome Odunze is droppable, even with the news that Shane Waldron is gone. That doesn't fix their problems until they get rid of Matt Eberflus and just
third option in the offense. Third option.
And it's not changing anytime soon. Keon Coleman with the injury, he's become droppable. I know it's
viable.
I know it sucks. And then the last one, Javonte Williams. I think that he's dead. That train's dead. Unfortunately, it hurts my heart a lot.
Did you notice all the rookie wide receiver names in this? So
Yeah.
sometimes I think dynasty is ruining redraft. These are reasons why.
Yeah.
People overvaluing rookies to an extent where you're holding on to Xavier Worthy when you never would have if it was anybody else.
No, not in a million years. But on name recognition, you want the speedy kid out of Texas. I get it. He'll be there someday. It's just not this year.
Oh, just not this year. Same with Romo
Yeah.
Dante. He's great. I love him. I think
Yeah.
he's wonderful. But
We
not
got spoiled with Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase and these guys coming out and just having huge rookie seasons. It's just not the norm. Freezy Fantasy, trade James Conner and Terry McLaurin for Jahmyr Gibbs and Deebo Samuel. I don't know that I would do that right now.
I think McLaurin's value is so much higher than Debo's right now that
It is.
I can't make that deal. I don't think Gibbs offsets James Conner enough for
He doesn't.
that.
No.
Yeah.
And Chris Robin at Detroit Beastie over there on Twitter, guys. Make sure if you love good DFS and betting advice, go find Chris. Is that a corduroy jacket, Reedy? It's sweet.
It's not. I'll get you one, Chris. What do you think of that?
Next week I'm wearing my corduroy jacket.
I have a corduroy
Chris.
one though. I'll wear that one next week too.
All right, we're all corduroy next week. Love to see it. Let's pop over here real quick before we get out of here for some streaming defenses this week. Green Bay at Chicago. This is the first one. I think this is a phenomenal matchup. I love it, and I would love to go grab Green Bay on the waiver wire if you need a defense.
So they got dropped because of the bye week. They're like a top 3 defense, right? Yeah. And the matchup's good. So if they're out there, definitely add them if you can, right? Like that's, yeah.
Well, yeah, I want them against the Waldron-less Chicago offense. Here's what Caleb Williams, I think, is kind of screwed rest of season because now you're going to have a coordinator come in that's going to change up an offense on a rookie who hasn't fully learned the offense yet in a league that he hasn't fully figured out with an offense that just doesn't have – the weapons aren't as good as we thought they were going to be. The offensive line hasn't been good. The coaching's been suspect.
The line hasn't been good. I think we know who DJ Moore is, right? And he's unhappy. DeAndre Swift has been good up until this week when I actually used him in DFS and he crapped out.
Of course.
Matchup. Caleb Williams has not been good. I know he's flashed a couple of games. My knock on him, I had 2 things. I didn't like his mentality and in turn leadership ability. And I didn't like his height because he's small. So the offensive line, part of the problem is because he's small, he can't see stuff, and now he doesn't have the protection he should have, so he can't see over the line. And the leadership wise, man, that guy's it's hard. He's so young that, but he's got to step it up a little bit there.
Yeah. You've seen younger guys do it. Brock Purdy, Jaden Daniels has done it this season.
Jaden Daniels and Drake May are both big-time leaders who pick their team
exactly. Bo Nix, that team is stuck. They made him a captain.
Yes.
He was such a leader, just even in training camp and preseason. So
I'm not trying to make an excuse for his age. No, everything's at a different pace. I know he has all the physical skills, but there's more than arm strength, right? And
I think he will get there. The situation just in Chicago sucks. And Green Bay's defense is good. And
very good. They're going to abuse him this week, or they should. You never know. I mean, the physical ability, hey, maybe he'll pull out. But I like that Green Bay defense against a new OC and a rookie quarterback. Oh, yeah.
Yep. Oh, me too. Houston has got Dallas in Dallas this week, but Cooper Rush threw for 47 yards last night this weekend. No, it's worth a laugh. Sorry, Casey. We really do feel bad. 47 yards, man. Like, come on.
He's competing with Will Levis for who can show us just how bad they are.
Right.
Will
but Houston's defense against Dallas, I think, is kind of a no-brainer. And especially Dak's out for the rest of the season. I'm probably going to be targeting this Dallas offense with DSTs the rest of the way.
Dak Prescott's out. Like it's very
Mike McCarthy's on his way out too. Gotta be. Now the last one here, the Rams defense against New England. Targeting rookie quarterbacks, no matter how good they've been for fantasy, still makes sense to me.
What sometimes what people don't get is Drake May could have a very good game for fantasy, And the Rams could still be a very good defense to play in fantasy.
Yep.
All at the same time. The Patriots offense is just not very good. I know. I watch every game. They're just not very good. They don't have a lot of talent there. It's, Stevenson and Drake May and some Hunter Henry mixed in here and there, but not good. It's just not good.
We're not even excited about Pop Douglas anymore. Just like was a 1-game deal and it faded away.
He had a lot of targets this week. He just didn't do anything with them.
Exactly.
But
That's
it
been
didn't matter.
Yeah. Like New England's probably going to win this game, I think.
They might. Drake May has brought that kind of a spirit with leadership to the team.
But I still like the Rams defense because, one Ramondre fumble and boom.
2 picks. They might run one back in too, right? Like they're just,
Mm-hmm.
they're not a bad defense, by the way.
No.
As we saw in this horrible game that they just had. But it's, you're going to see, we're going to see some things like that next week too.
Yep. I'm all for it. I am also all for getting you guys out of here so you can get those waiver wires locked in. Before we go, though, I want to remind you, tomorrow night, the Nate and Herms show, roughly 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Last week, we didn't go until almost midnight. We ran until almost 2 a.m.
Give everybody the secret sauce for why. If you like wrestling, watch the AEW show.
And then get done with AEW.
The show will start.
Hop on with us. We're going to talk about lots of awesome stuff too, probably.
And my apologies, Herms. I'll be asleep by then because I'm old. But otherwise, I would watch it.
Most normal people would sleep. We're just insomniacs who happen to be best friends and get to do a podcast together now. But then I'll be back on Thursday with Miss Casey Kasem. She knows more than you do. She knows more than I do. So make sure you tune in. We're going to give you start sits, Thursday night football preview, some post waiver ads, and our bold predictions for the week. I almost got mine right last week. I said Denver was going to beat Kansas City. Blocked field goal away from that being a reality.
One of the places I feel great is when we do the DFS show and you tell me, hey, Casey was talking about this guy last night. And I always feel good. And I think the 2 or 3 times that's happened this season, we were right.
Oh, so, yes.
I always feel good getting that validation that Casey was saying similar things.
Yeah, guys, and that's why you want to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Don't miss all this good advice, this good information. We're here to help you win. And speaking of DFS, Mike and I will be back at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for DFS Live this Friday. And after that, I am back this week for Q&A Live, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time with my new co-host, Keith Fleming. You know him from Fantasy Six Pack. I know him as the guy who's going to help me answer all of your questions. But if we miss you, check us out on Reddit, 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time every Sunday up until kickoff. We'll be answering all of your start, sit, trade, roster, whatever fantasy questions you've got for us, we will answer. That'll be me, Mike, and Casey. We got a big week here, man. Everybody's making a playoff push. We wish you the best of luck on your waiver wire. Get the guys you need. Win your week. Come back around tomorrow night for Herms and I, and then Thursday for all your start sits. For Mike Reedy, I am Nate Polvogt, folks. Go out and win your week, and we will see you next Tuesday.